And so we're here because Dane here decided to do a painting project and actually paint the portrait of one of our fallen officers here at Cheyenne PD. So this is a portrait of Officer Henry Edwards, who actually he was stabbed to death while working here in the city of Cheyenne on January 23rd, 1907, which actually was his 32nd birthday on that same day while he was working here in Cheyenne. So what had happened was Officer Edwards heard a sound of breaking glass in the area of Cary and 16th Street. There was a bar there, a saloon. So Officer Edwards ran to where he heard the noise of breaking glass, and he found that a suspect had thrown another man through a plate glass window there at the saloon, and the suspect took off running. So Officer Edwards actually chased the suspect, and during the chase the suspect turned and stabbed Officer Edwards in the lung. Officer Edwards actually drew his revolver and fired 2 rounds at the suspect, actually missing the suspect, but Officer Edwards continued the chase to the Becker Hotel, where he actually apprehended the suspect in the restaurant at the Becker Hotel. He was able to handcuff him, and he waited until the chief of police arrived, who took custody of the suspect, and then he collapsed from his injury. A doctor was summoned to the restaurant there and actually placed Officer Edwards on a table there in the restaurant, dressed his wounds, and then he was later taken to the hospital. At the hospital, he was advised, Officer Edwards was advised that he was not going to recover from the injury, that he was going to die. And so they took him to his house, his father's house that was downtown here. His father happened to be a Civil War veteran as well. And so Officer Edwards, being a devoted father, the first thing that he thought of was his son here that was in the portrait with him. And so Officer Edwards actually married a young woman on his deathbed so that his boy would have a mother. Officer Edwards knowing that he would die. And then Officer Edwards' final words before he actually did pass was he was glad that he could do his duty, knowing that he would die from his injury. He was glad that he could do his duty and actually take the suspect in custody. So that was his last words before he died. Actually, before dying as well, he made a sworn statement to the city attorney, naming the suspect who had murdered him, so knowing that he would be unable to testify in court. And so he did that before he died as well. So this really exemplifies, Officer Edwards exemplifies I guess the heroism, the professionalism of the Cheyenne Police Department that we've experienced over the last 150 years. And so we're very honored to accept this painting from Dane to really remember what Officer Edwards did. And as you know, this room is actually named after Officer Edwards. So this is the Edwards Community Room. And so Dane, you want to maybe explain why you chose Officer Edwards to do your painting?
I don't know if there was really a major conscious decision behind it. It was just something about the picture kind of drew me to it, because here we're kind of seeing more than just his occupation. We're also kind of seeing some of the more universal aspects of his human experience, because we're seeing him here also as Charles Henry Edwards Jr., the Wyoming citizen, Charles Henry Edwards Jr., the father, Charles Henry Edwards Jr., the man. So we're kind of seeing that multiplicity to him that's more than just as a police officer, but also these other aspects of his life.
Yeah, so. Very good. And just so you know, Officer Edwards was born here in Cheyenne. His father was one of the first settlers into Wyoming, and as I said, his father was a Civil War veteran. His father was a long-term resident of Cheyenne as well, so a lot of history there with the founding of our city and actually our statehood. So really proud to have this picture in our building. And another thing too, just to kind of give you a sense of the history of the Cheyenne Police Department, if the public is welcome to come in and walk in the lobby, go down near the elevator. We have a display of some historic facts. Up on the 2nd floor, we have pictures of some of our previous town marshals and chiefs of police. And just to give you an example of what you can find if you come in the building here. On the 2nd floor, you see a picture of T.J. Carr. He was a town marshal in 1881. He later went on to become the U.S. Marshal of Wyoming and then the warden for the state pen as well. He was also on the posse that went after Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So we also have a picture of Chief James Byrd. He was chief in 1966. And as you know, I don't know if you know, but what was going on in the country in 1960s? Civil rights issues, right? But Cheyenne appointed an African American as their police chief in 1966. So again, it exemplifies the type of history that we have here in the city of Cheyenne. We also have in the lobby here, you have a picture, or you have a story about Marshal Mellinger, who in 1867, you see a picture of our first police station in 1867. You look back on the records, there's a statement there that shows one of the things he asked from the city council back in 1867, the first year that the city was a city. He asked for a requisition to purchase 12 more balls and chains. So back then they had, he had city prisoners actually pick up trash on the streets of Cheyenne and actually repair the wooden sidewalks and rake the dirt roads and so forth like that, and he had inmates do that. And so he needed more balls and chains because he said business was good. So anyways, you also have a picture of Sergeant Jack McFarland. He was a police officer from 1900 to 1921. And the big mural on the wall over here, you'll see the tall guy, that's Sergeant Jack McFarland. Now near the elevators, you'll see his saddle, his firearms, you'll see his pictures, his uniform is there from in the 1920s. And so Jack McFarland again kind of exemplifies the kind of people we hire here at Cheyenne PD, because in 1901 he was shot while doing his duty. And a lot of people would probably find a new career path at that point. But no, he continued down his path of being a police officer. He was shot again in 1912 doing his duty. He was shot again in 1916. And then he was also shot in 1918. So he was shot 4 different occasions while doing his duty here in downtown Cheyenne. But he continued and he retired in 1921. So now if you go on the display case over here, you'll see that Sergeant McFarland wore all the bullets that he was shot with on a watch chain. The watch chain is in the cabinet over here, along with his firearms that he carried on duty, his shotgun. There's a little .32 caliber pistol there that is also being displayed, and he carried that as a backup firearm, but also he asked that his wife would carry that firearm into town back in those days because it was a seedy environment, and he wanted to make sure his wife had protection. So there's a lot of good history here in the police department, and we really want to thank you for helping us preserve that.
Of course.